Good afternoon, I'm Brian Reagan. This is
Tyler Kelly.
And today we are in Isaiah chapter 5, and Tyler's going to read verses 1 and 2 and 20 and 21.
Now let me sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved regarding his vineyard. My well-beloved is a vineyard on a very fruitful hill. He dug it up and cleared out its stones and planted it with the choicest vine. He built a tower in its midst and also made a winepress in it. So he expected it to bring forth good grapes, but it brought forth wild grapes.
Hit verse 7.
All right. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant plant. He looked for justice, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry for help. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight.
All right. So 5, 1 through 7 is in the life and teaching of Jesus, especially when Jesus uses the parable of the vineyard, not the one where people get hired. Technically that should have been, a parable of the wages, if we were to label it in English. That we're talking about the one where it says, a man had a vineyard and he kept sending his servants, and eventually he said, I'll send my son. This is what Jesus is having reference to. Because when those people heard it, they understood verse 7, that Jesus was talking about them, because the Lord's vineyard was the nation of Israel. And you say, no, look at when you go over to the New Testament and you read, Jesus says, what shall be done with that vineyard? Other people will manage it. It'll be leased out, because God's going to get a harvest from people who will return a harvest. And that's the fullness of that comes in the church. That the Lord never got out of Israel the harvest that he should have for all the good that he put into them. But the Lord expects a harvest. And there's a certain point even in verses 1 through 7 where in the Gospel of John, when Jesus says, I'm the vine, you're the branches, my Father is the husbandman, this is also in there. And so don't miss out that God expects a harvest. God has planted a vineyard, and if we don't produce, there comes a time where it cuts us out. And John 15 reminds us of that. And then verses 20 and 21, and this, Tyler, always makes me think about Romans 1, that because they glorified not God, God gave them up. Because they were not thankful, God gave them up. And they became wise in their own eyes. I look at verses 20 and 21 and you say, America right now, all this stuff that you read about Israel is where America is really functioning at. All the bad stuff. We looked at the highlights in chapter 3. And I'm just going to say it. At what point did we say that it was a good idea that little boys could say, I'm a little girl, and then we take the signs off of the bathrooms and say, oh, it's no longer a boy's bathroom or a girl's bathroom. It's a non-binary bathroom, because we don't want to tell children what they are. Really? Really? Wow. Tolerance. Oh, tolerance is good. And tolerance is so good, Tyler. If you're not tolerant enough, we'll brand you a hate monger and put you in jail because you're not tolerant enough of our toleration. That's how tolerant we are. That's called wise in their own eyes. That God was nice. He said, what he's really saying is, woe to the stupid, who are too stupid to realize how stupid they are. You got some comments on this one, my brother?
No, sir.
Yeah! You ever just want to do that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Regular.
Go ahead.
Ah!
All right.
There.
There we go. Welcome to the America we're living in. Good is bad, bad is good, orange is purple, blue is gray. I don't know. You said, but where's the hope, brother? There's hope coming. There's hope coming. Well, the book of Isaiah filled with hope. Verse 25, Tyler.
Therefore the anger of the Lord is aroused against his people. Oh boy, that sounds like fun. He has stretched out his hand against them and stricken them, and the hills trembled. Their carcasses were his refuse in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still.
All right, so there's judgment coming. Now, verse 26. He will lift up a banner to the nations from afar, and will whistle to them from the end of the earth. Surely they shall come with speed, swiftly. And this is talking about when Messiah comes. You know why America is unique in all the history of the world? Here's why. In the Bible, God only ever chose one nation to be his people, and that was Israel. And in all the history of the world, there was only ever one nation that said, we as a nation from our founding choose the God of the Bible, and that was America. The nation God chose said, we don't want you. And then the nation that has chosen God has said, we're not really sure anymore. That's what makes America unique in all the history of the world. We were the only ones that ever chose God. Is there still hope for America? Yeah. But it's going to come down to the church getting back on track with doing this thing about preaching Jesus and not preaching what makes the market happy. I'm Brian Reagan. This is
Tyler Kelly.
And Jehoshaphat and I, we bid you good afternoon, and Lord willing, we'll see you tonight for our Twilight Talks on Faith.